Okay, my outstanding friends, it's Roger once again, and before I even start, I want to apologize. And when I apologize, I am doing it sincerely because I went for the spectacular versus the investigated analysis of something, because I got everybody sent me. I mean, I had a ton of them. I must have 50 or more people sent me stuff that said, "Oh, you got to watch this troll. It's just they based it on your research, and oh, it's all this stuff." Well, I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! This is fabulous!" Without really looking into it, all I could see was a trailer. Now, I did sign up for Netflix. I'm going to watch it and see what they have to say, but I didn't do any research. All right, that to me is a mortal sin. If you're going to comment on something, you damn better well research it, and I didn't, and I apologize. You know, the crazy thing is, I have studied virtually everything that I could think of, and for some reason, I really never got into the Norse. I knew that they had this idea of Ymir or whatever. His head exploded and made the universe or something like that, and it's so bizarre, and it is. It's crazy. It's absolutely insane. So I sort of stayed away from it. But here's the key. What can we find that links the Norse to the rest of the world in their cosmology? Well, I'm looking for, when I say cosmology, that just means how did the universe get here, and what's the start of mankind, all that sort of stuff. Personifications. That's the key. They did the same thing as the Greek myths. Everything had a personification. Everything there is a creature. You see this? I'm finding so much relevance here. They're talking about all these different gods, all right, and they all had purposes, and they were all personified. Now listen to this. It says the cosmos in Norse mythology consisted of 9 worlds, that flanked a sacred tree, Yugostral. Units of time and elements of the cosmology are personified as deities or beings. Everybody had the same stories. They were like the wind was a being, heat was a being, cold was a being, hatred was a being. Various forms of a creation myth are recounted where the world is created from the flesh of the primordial being Mir, and first 2 humans are Ask and Embia. These worlds are foretold to be reborn after the events of Ragnarok, when an immense battle occurs between the gods and their enemies, and the world is enveloped in flames and only to be reborn anew. There the surviving gods will meet, and the land will be fertile and green, and 2 humans will repopulate the world. Whew, that's got a lot of similarity to this. All right, like I say, I read most everything, and Apollodorus is one of the best. He wrote in about 150-ish BC. So that's 150 years before Christ. He was a Greek scholar, historian, grammarian, all this stuff. He was a contemporary of Dionysus, and he was pretty hot stuff. Now, he wrote a ton of books. What did he write about? Well, let's see what he wrote about. Okay, what can we learn? Well, let's look at Apollodorus Library, Book 1, Chapter 1, Section 1. This is the start of what he writes. Now, what did he talk about? Let me just make you understand. Apollodorus was in the year 150 BC. Prior to him was Hesiod. All right, so Apollodorus used a lot of Hesiod stuff. And of course, he used a lot of other early writers, because he gleaned all this information from what they had written. He didn't just say, "Oh, you people are all crazy." He wrote it down, and then he said, "What makes sense to this and what makes sense to that?" Just exactly what I'm going to do right now. And here we are at Apollodorus. Now, we just saw the personification of all feelings and everything in the Norse. Well, what does Apollodorus have to say? And don't forget, he was a big shot. He was a real big shot. Hesiod was the first really basically to write about anything. He was taught by the daughters of Zeus, who was the primary god in 800 BC, long before before Apollodorus or Ovid. And I'm going to go into Ovid too, because he has the same story in Metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is changing a caterpillar into a butterfly, that type of thing, complete transformations. And that's what Ovid talks about. Same thing that Apollodorus talks about. Same thing that Hesiod talks about. Same thing in the Norse mythology. So let's see what personifications the Greek myths had. And when I say myths, I no longer hold that term to mean silly things. I hold that term to mean our true history. Something there is true. I don't know who's got the exact story. They're all damn close. And you really got to look through Velikovsky. That's a long search because he had like 4 books. He started with Worlds in Collision, which was the primordial flood, 1500 BC. That was the hot water flood, created all my mud fossils, and accounts for all the things they say. And right now, I can tell you right now, there's absolutely no question in my mind, we are living in 100% biological, entity-filled universe. And there's no dead rocks anywhere. They're dead now, maybe, but they were derived from a life process and will convert back into another life. At some point, they will turn back into another creature. Everything you eat came from something that died. Now don't forget, this was written in the BC era by Apollodorus. Listen to this. This is the beginning of his book. It says, Sky was the first who ruled over the whole world. Having wedded the earth, he begat first the 100-handed, as they are named, Bararius, Gaius, Codus, who were unsurpassed in size and might, Titans, each of them having 100 hands and 50 heads. Now, I have not found those, but I found out most of the other things he's talking about. After these, earth bore him the Cyclops, to wit, Argus, Stephus, Brontus, of whom each had one eye on his forehead, but them sky bound and cast into Tartarus, which is basically hell, a gloomy place in Hades, as far distant from earth as earth is distant from the sky. That's not too far. Now, and again he begat children by earth, to wit, the Titans, as they are named, Ocean, Coeus, Hyperus, Srius, Iapetus, and the youngest of all, Cronus. Also daughters, the Taianides, as they are called, Techus, Rhea, Themis, Myrmidon. These are all moons. These are all planets and moons and oceans and rivers. Now, the earth grieved at the destruction of her children who had been cast into Tartarus, persuaded the Titans to attack their father. The destruction of her children. The Cronus ate their father and gave Cronus an animal. Hold on one second, I'm getting confused. Give me 1 second to organize myself. Okay, I see where I was getting confused. This is about the moons and all these children of the gods. And it was foretold that a son would kill his father and take control and become the new god. So what would happen is the father, Cronus, would eat all of the children. And he would eat them and send them down into Tartarus, which is his gut, really, basically. And then his wife, Hera, was so upset that she decided she would fool him by giving him a rock to eat, because he made her give him all the kids to eat. So he kept eating them, and then they attacked him. All but Ocean attacked their father and gave Cronus an adamantine sickle. They all but the Ocean attacked him and cut Cronus off, cut off his father's genitals, and Cronus cut off his father's genitals. Hold on a second. You know, my confusion, I was going to cut out and just act like I wasn't confused. Well, I was confused. And that's what research is about. If you're not confused, you're not doing research. Because you can't just start, oh, this is going to be it, and that's all. No. You get confused all day long. Now, here's what I was confused about. Sky. Sky was the first who ruled over the whole earth. Well, Sky was the one that had his testicles cut off by Cronus. I was thinking Cronus was the one that had his testicles cut off. You know, you got to go back over this many times, but let's see if we can try to understand this together. Sky gave birth to all these things. He begat children by earth. All right, so he had all of these children by earth. So Sky in itself, the whole sky, is a creature that can impregnate other creatures and have all the, or I don't know what it impregnated, but it had all the earth, it had all these titans, it had the oceans, it had all this stuff. These are all moons too, Themis, Phoebe, Dion, Tethys, Rhea, they're all moons. Now, the earth was upset with the sky, because what happened was he was grieved at the destruction of her children who had been cast into Tartarus. The sky itself ate the children of earth and put them down into hell. She persuaded the Titans, who were her children, to attack their father, the sky, and gave Cronus, which is one of her children's, an adamantine sickle. And they all but Ocean didn't help them. All of them attacked attacked Sky. And Cronus cut off his father's genitals and threw them into the sea, who was the ocean. And from the drops of the flowing blood were born the Furies, to wit, Alecto, Typhon. I don't know what to wit is. Somebody's going to have to tell me about that. And Megaera. Those were all born from that blood that dripped from the testicles of Sky into the ocean. Now, after having dethroned their father, who was the Sky, they brought up their own brethren, who were in his gut, who had been hurled down to Tartarus and committed the sovereignty to Cronus. Right? Now, so they give Cronus rule at this point. He was the new sovereign. Right? Now, he again bound and shut them up in Tartarus again. The Sky got a hold of him again and wedded his sister, Rhea. But he again bound and shut them up in Tartarus. That's all I can think of. It must be Sky. And since both earth and sky foretold him that he would be dethroned by his own son, he used to swallow his offspring at birth. So he swallowed his offspring. And who's he? I think it must be Cronus. This is where it gets confusing, because they started, he did this and he did that. Well, who's he? He again bound and shut them up. Well, he again, so it has to be Sky. And since both earth and sky were foretold that he would be dethroned by his own son, he used to swallow his offspring at birth. And that's what Rhea was, his sister. And she would eat the babies. His firstborn, Hestia, he swallowed. Then Demeter and Hera, and after them Pluto and Poseidon. I'm getting confused again, my friends. Okay, I see what I was confusing Hera with Rhea. All the same letters. So all right. We know that he swallowed Hestia, Demeter, Hera, and after them Pluto and Poseidon. So all his kids he ate so they wouldn't come and dethrone him. So his wife, who was Rhea, not Hera, because I'm thinking, how could he eat his own wife? And anyway, enraged at this, Rhea, his wife, hid out in Crete. She repaired to Crete. She hid out. And there's a story in Revelations about the man and the woman standing on the moon about to give birth, and the dragon ready there to eat the baby, and she was run off by God. She was taken off by God to hide in the wilderness. And that's what this is, very, very close. So enraged at this, Rhea, his wife, who has to give him the babies, she hid out in Crete where she was big with her newborn Zeus, who was going to be coming out. She was ready to give birth. And she brought him forth in a cave of Dictae. She gave him to the Curetes and to the nymphs of Adrastea and Ida, daughters of Melusus, to nurse. This is very similar. Now, these nymphs fed the child on milk of the Melentia. Now, in the Norse, they talk about being fed from the teats of a bull or something. I tell you, it just gets, it's hard to follow this. I mean, it is. You get confused, and don't give up. Think about it. Write it down, and write down this, you got to do a little, you got to do a little research. You can't just give up. And trust me, it's a hard thing to push through some of this stuff. It just sounds like complete nonsense. But once you see, this is what the Greeks wrote, this is what the Norse wrote, this is what the Mayans and the Incas wrote, and this is what they wrote in Europe and Africa. They're all the same stories. They're all the same stories. And I realized this mostly from reading from Velikovsky's accounts. He was the one that really did the legwork. He went all around the world, everywhere. India, everywhere. And he came up with all the same basic framework. They weren't all identical stories, and they weren't all identical encounters. Some places boiled, where the earth literally stood still for a while. It says in these ancient texts, it says it. And they all have the same story. It's not just some silly Bible book. Oh, the Bible, that's just a silly book. No, it's not. That is a historical document. Now, was it twisted and turned here and there? Yeah, maybe a little here and there. But when I see all of these different cultures having all the same similar situations, and they twisted theirs too. I can't believe all this stuff is exactly the way they say it. I mean, 100 handers, 100 heads, 50 heads. But then I look at the dragon in Morocco, and the damn things are over 1,000 miles long, and the one on the east coast of the United States, Quetzalcoatl, is thousands of miles long. And they're all over the earth. And these are the kind of things that were written. There was dragons. There was giants. And what it says in the first thing in the Bible where it talks about Genesis is there was giants in the earth in those days. And then after that is when the other giants we know about came, when the daughters of men, when the daughters of men had intercourse with the gods, and they had giants. But the first giants were the giants in the earth, which are the earth, which were these giants that they're talking about being eaten and being in the earth. They are the earth. Now, will they ever wake up? I don't know. But all I can assume is that they are and still are the earth, or at least they're bound up somewhere down inside. That's what they say. And I am not going against any of these words anymore. I am looking deeply into them. You do what you think is right, but I am looking into them. I'm done laughing. All right, listen to this. This is just so bizarre. All right, so Rhea was enraged. She goes and hides out, and the nymphs feed the baby, but the baby, cries, he screams, he does this and that. So listen to this. The nymphs fed the child on the milk from Amaletia, and the Curetes in arms, these were the guards. They guarded the baby in the cave. They would clash their spears on their shields in order that Cronus might not hear the child's voice. But Rhea wrapped a stone in swaddling cloth and gave it to Cronus to swallow as if it were her unborn child. So he swallows it down. Now, Zeus grows up. When Zeus is full grown, he took Metis, daughter of Ocean, to help him, and she gave Cronus a drug to swallow, which forced him to disgorge first the stone, then the children whom he had swallowed. So, because these are immortal beings. These are gods. They're not going to go away. They're somewhere. I don't know where they are, but they don't die. So with the aid of Zeus, they waged a war against Cronus and the Titans. They fought for 10 years, and Earth prophesied victory to Zeus if he should have as allies those who had been hurled down to Tartarus. So Zeus has the Tartarus guys with him. All right, so it appears those are the guys that were sent to hell. I don't know why. We got some work to do. So Zeus would win if he had allies that were the ones that were hurled down to Tartarus. So he says, okay, I'm going to do that. So he slew their jailoress, Campe, and loosened their bonds, and the Cyclopses then gave Zeus thunder and lightning and a thunderbolt. And that's why he was able to slay Typhon with his thunderbolts. And on Pluto they bestowed a helmet, and on Poseidon a trident. Armed with these weapons, the gods overcame the Titans, shut them up in Tartarus, and appointed the 100-handers to be the guards of them. They themselves cast lots for the sovereignty, which was the leader. And Zeus was allotted the dominion of the sky. To Poseidon was given the seas. To Pluto was given Hades. This goes on for a very long time, but let me just tell you why I know this is all true. Because they're talking about thunderbolts and Zeus. And Zeus, so the Cyclopses gave Zeus thunder and lightning and a thunderbolt. And in later it says that Zeus slayed Typhon with his great and mighty sword, which is his thunderbolt. And I can show you Typhon, and I can show you the text that talks about him, and it describes him exactly as he was. All right, that troll movie is going to be interesting, but I'm going to tell you, this is just so far off the page. They're talking about all the titans and the ocean and all of these things which are the personifications of everything. The sea, the daughter of the sea. Now listen to this. To Iapetus, who was a moon, and Asia was born Atlas. Now listen carefully. Make sure that you understand this. Atlas, who has the sky on his shoulders. Atlas, who has the sky on his shoulders. And Prometheus, and Ephesus, and Menonidas, and he whom Zeus in the battle with the Titans smote with a thunderbolt and hurled down to Tartarus, which was Atlas. Let's see if we can find Atlas. All right, let's see what they had to say about Typhon. Typhon attempted to overthrow Zeus for the supremacy of the cosmos. He wanted to be the leader of everything. The two fought a cataclysmic battle. Zeus finally won with the aid of his thunderbolts, which were given to him by the Cyclopses. He defeated Typhon, who was cast into Tartarus, or buried underneath Mount Etna, or in later accounts, the island of Ischia, and in my account, North Africa. Okay, I'm not going to go into this deep. I've done it hundreds of times. This is the dragon totally across North Africa, the entire length. These are his legs that look exactly like the thighs of a human. And then he had coils. He was attacking this fish with venom. I am going to erase this. You will see. His red flary eye, his all his bedraggled fur and hair and feathers and whatever they were. I'm going to show you his dragon scales, his throat, and then where his throat was cut. And then I'm going to show you the text that was written about the event when he was killed and thrown to earth by Zeus using his great and mighty thunderbolts. Now don't forget, here's the fish and here's the dragon. The dragon is spitting all this black stuff down at the fish, and it ate all the way down into his vital flesh down to here. That's it. The dragon runs all the way across North Africa. These are the thighs of a human. Remember that word, the thighs of a human. His red flary eye is here. Let's look at it real quick. Alright, so here's his red flary eye. That's going to be in the text. Here's all his fluty, flashy fur and hair and whatever they call it coming down his body. This right here, this all the stuff right here is the dragon venom. That's venom. And that is nasty, nasty, nasty stuff. Coming out of his beard. It comes right out of his beard. You see it over here? This is the dragon's beard. Now you have Google Earth. I'm not going to belabor this. You can come up and look at it, but that's not your average lawn. All right, now this runs down this guy's throat, all the way down. These are his dragon-scaled throat. That's where he ate creatures and things, and I don't know what he ate. That's the key. Nobody knows how this could possibly have happened, but it was written that it was here. Now, here's his throat. These are all the dragon scales. I'm going to back out a little bit so they'll take in a... You see, looking all the way down. These are dragon plates, and they're scaled in plates. See it? Boom, 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 boom. So that he can move his neck around and do all that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it'd be solid. He wouldn't be able to move. Now, it comes all the way down to here. This is his throat, 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 throat. Ah! What's the ah mean? Well, he got cut by Zeus's great and mighty sword, which was a thunderbolt, and it's gushing red blood all over the desert, and it appears to still have some. There's a lot of nutrients left in that blood, I can tell you that. When they go green like that, that's blood meal. They sell blood meal to make plants grow green, and you don't get much greener than that in the desert. Now, that is where his throat was cut. And these are on ancient maps, and it is written about. And his body runs all the way down here. This is his huge body. Here's his thighs. And then on the end of the thighs were coils. And it runs all the way down the back here, all the way down. And these are still dragon scales way down here. You see this? And it's still running out of the dragon scale plates. These are plates. These are not like just mountains. Those are different plates. I mean, this thing was armored to the teeth. You see that? That's not just your average mountain range. That looks like all different types of transition metals in layers, like so that he can really, really protect himself from probably just about any kind of impact other than lightning. Lightning penetrates anything. There is nothing that can stop lightning from destroying its atomic nature. Plates, though, can certainly stop a hammer or a sword or something like that, or somebody's teeth, but lightning is a different story. Don't forget, Zeus finally won with the aid of his thunderbolts, and defeated Typhon, cast him down to earth. Okay, so let's finish up here with Apollodorus, and he's talking about Typhon. This is chapter 6, section 3. All right, when the gods had overthrown the giants, Earth was still more enraged, Earth itself, and it had intercourse with Tartarus and brought forth Typhon, who was the guy that I just showed you in the desert. You can read this whole thing. It was an offspring hybrid between man and beast, and he was unsurpassed in size. His thighs were of human shape and so prodigious bulk that he outtopped all the mountains. His head brushed the stars. All right, and then it goes on about his body was all winged and unkempt, and his hair streamed in the wind, and his head and cheeks, and fire flashed from his eyes, his red flaming eye. So great was Typhon, when hurling kindled rocks, he made for the very heaven with hissing and shouts, spouting a great jet of fire from his mouth. When the gods saw him rushing at heaven, they made for Egypt in flight. And being pursued, they changed their forms into those of animals. Typhon he was a big shot, and he was killed by Zeus, who is Jupiter. And Zeus gave birth from Jupiter to Venus. I'm sorry, it's all been written about, it's all way long ago written about, all considered ridiculous, and who could deny that? It is ridiculously crazy, but it is true. It appears to me. I'm seeing evidence instead of just dismissing it. I look for the evidence, and I found it. All right, they knew about this dragon. It was written in history right up till, this was from 1375. This is called the Atlas Catalan map from 1375, and this was the known world, and it was commissioned by some big shot back then, and they went all around the world and gathered stories and wrote them in these little glyphs all over. You see, they told about this or that happened. I don't know what this was about here, but I did see, there was a video that said pretty much most of what they were talking about here. It was really amazing. It was about the black-headed people and about the people that covered everything on them except their eyes. And then there was one about where when the people died, they threw them in these boiling, firing pots. And sometimes the women would jump in if their husbands were being burnt up, but the husbands never did. But see, back then, every one of these like little flag areas, these were all city-states. They had like a little ruler guy, like a little king guy that ran that little region. And then they had one big ruler that was in, that wore a crown somewhere. Here's the three wise men. This is amazing. Now, look at this. Here's the dragon. Well, here's the Red Sea. And they're talking about all these things, and somebody did a nice video about it. I saw it. I don't know, it was a while back. Anyway, here's the dragon. Here's his tail. This is way over on the other side of Africa. You see it? Here's Spain right here. There's Gibraltar, the Straits of Gibraltar. Well, there's another straits that I show, which was down in here, where Atlantis was, coming into the Sahara Ocean when it was an ocean. Now here's the dragon. There's his throat is cut right there. This is not some accidental occurrence. This is a dragon with his scales running all the way across North Africa. It's exactly what the Atlas Mountains were, and it's not just an accident. And there's other dragons all over the earth, and there was a bunch of them up here in different places. So, okay, this is a map from 1375. It's called the Atlas Catalan Abraham Kresk, and it shows that the dragon was here, and the dragon's throat was cut, and right below it was Atlantis, and there's the Red Sea, and there's a whole bunch of sayings that they have, or statements that they have about the peoples that lived in these areas. This was a map that was commissioned by some big shot long ago, and he said, I want you to go around, get all the stories of all the people that lived around, and collect their stories and categorize them and tell me who runs these city-states and all about this. And here's the three wise men. And, they went and they all these little stories underneath tell about the people that were living there and what they did. Look, they're hitting each other with clubs. There's pearl divers in the Gulf, and there's all kinds of things. And then they talk about how they lived. There's the black-headed people and the people that wore everything. The only thing you could see was their eyes. And then there was another one about where they burnt the people in pots when they died, and when the men died, a lot of times their wives would jump in the pot when they were burning to go with them. But the men never jumped in the pot with the women. That's what it said. I'm not kidding you. These were the stories. I told my wife, she said, well, obviously. Actually, she said, Okay, this is a map from 1375. It's called the Atlas Catalan Abraham Crusk. There's the dragon. All across North Africa, there's his throat cut. They knew about these things. I believe this is what was Atlantis. They're showing a boat coming in from the ocean in this direction. Atlantis is down in the area down in here. Now, it would have led into whatever was a sea was here at one time. I don't know. These creatures must have come from outer space. And they talk about who ruled all these city-states, and then they talk about how these people lived and what they did, and they were pearl divers and miners and so forth. And then one talks about, here's the three wise men, and one talks about an area where they burnt all the people when they died, and often the wives would jump in with the husbands because they didn't want to, I don't know. The way I took it was they couldn't fend for themselves or something. But it also said that the husbands never jumped in with the wives. So when I said that to my wife, she says, "Don't count on me jumping in." You see that they show the trolls with these kind of faces? Watch this. All right, here's one style. All right, this was found in Kentucky somewhere. I don't know who has it, or somebody just sent it to me. And they just look like the eyes, and looks like a nose and a mouth of some oddball-looking creature. And there was all kinds of crazy things going on in this earth, so that's not beyond belief. If you think it's silly, this is a footprint that is in Nigeria. Here's the coordinates right there. All right, there's the coordinates if you want to go look it up on Google Earth. And that is a footprint, my friends. And this is a town. All right, so the footprint they're standing in, you wouldn't even be able to see them in here. All right, now watch this. This is one footprint, and there's the next footprint. He just swished right through the guy's house. Now, you think, oh, that's a big footprint. Well, not really. All right, you see this? Plus, they have the wrong number of toes. They had 5 toes, only we have ones that have no toes. They're completely filled in. You wouldn't see any separation of the toes. Now, that's a person standing there. These are people here. I have a fingertip, just a tip of a finger, that's 3 feet long. All right, just the tip of a finger. So it's not very much different than the size of what you're looking at there. So, and mine is DNA tested and the whole 9 yards, and it is real and it's human. Let me just show you. Okay, this is the DNA reports done on the 3 samples that I will show you. And the 3 samples were that huge fingertip is 3 feet long. Another hand that is, I call it the mud tip, but it's 4 feet wide, the hand. And a lung that was from a creature about our size. They were all kinds of different sized creatures living here at the same time. And this was very, very sophisticated test. Very well done. Very knowledgeable people. Negative controls were negative. All the stuff they're looking for were positive. It was dense and heavy, excellent quality DNA. From the huge fingertip and from the lung. The mud tip hand wasn't quite as dense because it was more really transitioned than the other ones. But it was still Homo sapien mitochondrial B and D loop. And it just wasn't quite as dense. And they swear by the test. They just want you to understand, I was the one that extracted the stuff from it in like dried form, basically, and drilled down through the layers into the blood and sent that in glassine bags. And I was very careful the way I did things. So, and he says he stands behind the test results, and they were Homo sapien mitochondrial DNA. So that's my proof of what I did. And I mean, I went the whole 9 yards. Plus, we had 7 CAT scans done. And they weren't real illustrative because the whole nature of mud fossils is a complete invasion of the chemistry that was there. Like my goose here. His feathers and everything are just completely invaded because they were in hot, watery, solutions that had a lot of transition metals. They had a lot of salts and acids. They had a lot of free electrons and all kinds of things going on in there. And the little molecules that would have normally exploded because they were exposed continued to get soaked, and all of the stuff that would have exploded went into the waters, and the things that would have exploded turned stable. That's the whole reason for these things, is stability. And stability comes from long time soaking in these particular types of waters. And hot water. It's got to be hot. That's the key. Nobody ever expected that. Velikovsky did, though. He said everybody on Earth recorded a hot water flood. And that's all that's left of the bone in this particular bonehead. So this is a whole new science. And believe me, I know basically everything you need to know about it. And there were giants everywhere. That is literally a hair follicle from a giant. That is the erector muscle attachment. You see that? That right there is it's a little gland that hangs off the side. I can't remember what they call it now. But it's, oh boy. Anyway, I'll show you the picture of it. That's the gland right there. That's the erector muscle. That's where the hair comes out right up through the root. This is the hair ball. These two are the vein and artery. The hair grows down, turns around, and comes up. Sebaceous glands. I knew I'd remember it sooner or later. When you get old, things don't come back like they used to. But that's the erector muscle. That's why your hairs can stand up on end. Hold on a second. All right, these creatures were absolutely enormous. This is where the erector muscle attached. You see it right there? This is the sebaceous glands. You see that? You see that right there? That's the sebaceous glands. All right, this is where the hair comes right up through. Down in the bottom, these two spots are these two spots right here. And the hair goes and wraps around and goes straight up through. So here's your erector muscle attached right there. It makes your hair stand up on end. And there's your sebaceous gland right there. This thing's got to be, I don't know, hundreds at least times bigger than an average person's hair root. The root balls, they're not tiny, but this is absolutely certainly got to be hundreds of times, I would say. Let's even say 100. A 6-foot person would be 600 feet tall if they had this hair. Erector muscle. Sebaceous gland. A big creature. Okay, this is DNA tested. This is 3 feet long from the back to the very front tip of the fingernail and of the fingertip. And this is a fingertip. This is the fingernail. Now, it's somewhat eroded. It's a little hard to see, but I will show you. That's why I drew on here. This little cylinder in the back, this round spot, is where the bone bumps against the next bone so that they don't scrub the bone to bone. There's a little rubbery pad. Now, the blue and the red is the vein and the artery coming up to service the blood in the fingertip, which is dense. Now, it's not dense after it is eroded. The surface is, you can't get any blood out of it. I needed to get blood out of it to get it tested for DNA. So I broke off this piece over here, which actually has fingerprints on it. I'll show you in a second. But remember what you're seeing here. You can always go back and look at it again. I'm going to erase what I drew on here, and then you see if you see the same thing once I erase it. Okay, just take your time. All right, now let me just turn off the overhead light. You get a little better shot at it sometimes. All right, now, again, what are we looking at? You see that round spot in the back with those two little dimple-looking things? That's the vein and the artery. All right, the vein and the artery, one or the other. This round pad here, you see it going here and all the way around here? That's what bumps up your next bone so you don't scrub the calcium parts. This is literally the fingerprint. I mean the fingernail. Now, let's look at the fingerprints. Don't forget, this is 3 feet long. And like I say, I calculated this out to probably be about 160 feet tall. That's a good size, full-grown giant, basically. Now, I told you, this thing is actually flawless. This is the piece I broke off. You see these little dots here and a dot here and so forth? Those are the sweat pores that are in the ridges of your fingerprint. This is the piece I broke off, and the fingerprints start almost immediately after the fingernail. The fingernail was right up in this area, and the fingerprints start right away, and that's the sweat pores. Now, this broke off just like it was glued on there, just exactly like this. Underneath, it was flush with blood. And that's what it is in fingertips and toes and so forth. They're your terminals, and they are just saturated with blood. That's where your best place to get blood. I mean, of course, there's hearts and lungs and livers and so forth. Yes, they're saturated with blood. Okay, I think I have or will show you that fingertip. And in addition to that, that fingertip had the fingerprints here, and the grip skin here, as you see, is exactly what I'm showing you. I drilled down in here, and it's saturated with blood. You see, this is what kind of saturation of blood is in the fingertips and toes. Very easy to get blood out of those. So I showed you the fingernail, the fingerprints, where the blood is located, where I drilled down in there and got it from. Now I have another hand on another giant, and this is the hand from it. This one here, remember, that's 3 feet long. That's huge. This is only 4 feet wide, but still, that's a pretty good size hand. Now, that's a left hand. If you put yours out, you're going to have a tendon just like that. If you squish your fingers, your pad together, you're going to have that little cleave between the pad that runs off to your little finger and the pad that runs off to your thumb. That's where the thumb is. And I have a bunch of the knuckles and fingertips and so forth from this, and other body parts from this. And this was DNA tested human. Now, you see this grip skin on this one picking up, the silver stuff? That's totally different than what's underneath, just as I showed you in the other look. All right here. That's what we just, that's the grip skin peeling off. It just is on the tough parts of your body that do the work. So now, here's some friends of mine that found things. Jim Burchell and Arlie Caudle had this head down in Kentucky, and Gary Evans found this lung, and that's a lung. And when he broke it open, this is what was inside it. It looked like a regular rock, but he could see a little glowy part on the end, a little, part that looked different. And then after it dried out in a couple of weeks, this is what happened. It just turns to dust. So if they stay wet, sometimes they last. Now this was Phil Harris. He went out on a bet. Well, not a bet. I said I challenged everybody. I said, if you don't think these things are real, you go out in 15 minutes. You can't find one. You tell me. And within 15 minutes, Phil Harris found this, and he hit it with a hammer. He saw this red spot. He hit it with a hammer. It cracked right open. It's a heart. Now look at his finger. That's blood, and that's still red and raw. And this thing is probably from the same flood event as mine. You see how this looks kind of flat like here? I'll bet you it was laying this way down, and that's why the blood is starting to run out of probably that's the aorta. Now look at this. Now within an hour, this is what happened. Within an hour, it turned into this color. You see this? This is the oxidation state. All right, before it was all red blood, and I had a guy accuse me, "Oh, you painted that." I said, "Oh, don't be silly. I didn't paint anything." This is what a heart looks like. They have different valves and chambers and so forth, and it comes right down in the center, just like that. So this is not silly. This is all very, very real. And there's much more to it than you think. This is what Venus has. I mean, this is where Venus came from, this red spot. And this thing now has changed. And I believe it's about to give birth again, because Venus came out of there as a fiery comet, almost hit Earth. These were all recorded stories. Nothing that I'm making up. Velikovsky went and got all these stories from around the Earth. Now, in the last few years, in 2019, this thing started shedding. It turned round, and you can actually see right down inside. It looks exactly like a cervix. And they said it started shedding and flaking bloody red flakes out of it. So many, so fast that they thought it might just erase right off. No, it's crowning, and the blood is coming off, because this is literally a vagina. I'm sorry, that's just what we are into, my friends. Troll is a fabulous breakthrough, but it's nothing compared to what we're going to see in the end. Okay, what other information can I add? Well, I go for the blood vessels because they show up very nicely. And in the fingertips and in the toes, you have what they're called terminals. And at the very, very tip, you have an artery and a vein. So there'll be two little spots at the very end of every single fingertip and your toes. The artery comes down, brings in a clean blood all the way down. By the time it gets to here, it's worthless. And it jumps across over to the vein and goes back up to the heart. And lungs and liver and all that stuff gets cleaned up. Now, if we were to look at Stonehenge, do you think we'd ever be able to see any of these blood vessel spots? I think we can, because of something that nobody pays any attention to. It's called the heel stone. Ready to see it? Here it is right here. There it is right there. Now don't forget, I'm saying at the tips they have the little dots. Now watch this. This is, if you can't tell that's a foot, I don't know if you have never seen a foot before, that's a foot. And it's the heel stone, and it's way down the line. You see these dots on the end? You see those dots? You see those dots? They're at the end of the finger, or the toes. Those dots are where the blood came out. I just showed you. See, look at them. Those dots are for to pass the blood from one to the other. Now, if you follow this back and you have any idea about anatomy and biology and so forth, there's a certain area in here where the blood congeals together and it all comes back down. As a matter of fact, I think I can show it in this other shot. Well, you don't see it, but you can see. You see right this spot here? That's basically it, but on your foot. They all come sort of in a blob back together. And that's what we're looking at here. All right. Then, you see down here? I believe that's the black side, which would be the vein. Now, you see how it's flat here? That guy died in the Great Flood, and his foot was laying over flat. Virtually everything I have. Virtually everything I have has a flat spot. This is another one that's a no toe. This one has the toes built in. That one has regular toes. But I'm sure it died like this. Caesar, I'm positive, he died like that. All right, my lung that I had DNA tested also is flat as a pancake. They all died in a hot flood. Hold on. I know it's here somewhere. Hold on, I gotta find it. Okay, I found it, I'm sorry. This is the lung. And do you see that? As flat as a pancake on the back. Absolutely flat. And almost all of them died like that. Well, basically all of them. Sometimes it's hard to find the flat spot, but if you look carefully, it's almost everywhere. Now this is the heel stone. The heel stone. And it had a twin. Somebody just took the twin at one time. It was called the heel stone and the twin heel stone. Now, this is way down the road from Stonehenge, but it is part of Stonehenge, and this was a monument to a giant. The body and the circular part up there is all made of body parts as well. I've seen it. This will be easily checked. This is the kind of stuff you're looking for, is the fabric. It'll be all over this thing. Not hard to test this at all. See, vein and artery. Okay, my friends, I just want you to know I've been doing this for a very long time. This is February 9th, 2015. I uploaded all of these pictures. And this was when I was studying the fascia and the interstitium. I had all this stuff I was understanding at this particular time, working with some of the top anatomists in the world. And all of this stuff, you see all these pictures over and over. I mean, I've got zillions of them. And all this is related to anatomy, which I had to understand every bit of anatomy and chemistry and so forth. Let me go right to the very end. And you'll see down here at the very end, this is, you know, you have to know every detail. Because I could find every detail in my mud fossils. I have to know every little detail of every little body part. And, you know, how to check what's in the organs, and, you know, how they attach and where they interface, and all the different, you know, the blue and the red, which is the veins and arteries, how the the spinal cord works, and, you know, virtually everything. You have to know all of this stuff. You know, these aren't really fabulous looking pictures, but I don't care. I could get enough information out of them to be able to tell what I wanted to tell. You know, some of them weren't really 100% helpful, but, you know, I really did a lot of work on this. So my point being right now is that I am virtually the only one in the world right now that's qualified to comment on this stuff in extreme detail. This is all biology. Nobody knows about this stuff. Nobody has any clue about it. And I found all of this stuff, and of course the carbon cycle, that's another thing that's a serious issue. And organic compounds and kerogens and bitumens, and how, you know, the organic compounds turn into kerosenes and bitumens and, you know, all kinds of stuff. They turn into burnable things, hydrocarbons.